Hey, and welcome back. In today's video, we're going to be focusing on the bass drum and digging in a little deeper with a product that I was just introduced to, Bassplate. Now, I've been talking to the folks at Bassplate over the last few weeks, and they've invited me to check this out and try it. So yes, in full transparency, they did send me this for free, but all the thoughts and opinions today are going to be my own. But what I will say is if I really didn't feel like I would be interested in it or enjoy it, I probably would have said no from the beginning. And honestly, getting to talk to them and learn more about the different use cases for this already has me more intrigued and really feeling like this may have been an oversight not to look at something like this before. So why would you want to use something like this, a bass drum docking system? My initial impression was always to raise the bass drum up, which is typically done on smaller drums like 16 and 18-inch kick drums. And that's really a practical use case, meaning that our bass drum pedals, the beaters don't go low enough to hit those drums if they were on the ground, where it wouldn't cause an issue with the bottom side of the beater scratching up the head and really make the pedal non-functioning. So it raises the drum off the ground to allow the beater to be positioned in a way that it could hit near the center of the drum head. Now, I don't see as many drummers with 20, 22, or 24-inch bass drums raising it up because there's an issue of the bass drum getting too tall and it's hard to position our toms. A lot of the risers that I've seen out there in the past, like the ones that come with bop kits, usually made by like Gibraltar or something, those tend to raise up the bass drum maybe like 2 to 3 inches off the ground, which is a lot. You're definitely going to notice that when it's set up. What I find really appealing about this is it only raises the drum an inch off the ground. So that shouldn't be too dramatic of a change for my normal setup working or not working. Now, I haven't really gotten a chance to look at this yet, but when I talked to them, the model that I chose to go with was for 20-inch bass drums, which I also found out can work for 16-inch drums as well in most cases. Obviously, that depends on how many lugs you have or the specific brand, but that's also appealing because maybe I could use this in a floor tom to bass drum conversion. So let's go ahead and open this up and take a look. So in the package here, we have the actual plate, which is made out of a very durable metal material. I'm not sure exactly what sort of metal, but this thing is strong. What I've also been told by them is you can flex it a little bit. So if you need to contour it to the different size drum you're using, it's flexible enough to do that, but I don't think this is just gonna bend on its own accidentally. Also included in here, we have 4 screws. These look like normal lug screws. I'm not exactly sure if they'll work with my Gretsch bass drum or not, but I think they're probably a little bit longer so that if this extra distance is too long for your current lug screws, you have an option there. We also have the instructions here, and when I was talking to them, they made it clear that it's very important to follow the instructions. That's probably the biggest issue they have with customers reaching out is people who didn't follow the instructions directly, because a few of the steps for installation are quite deceptive. So this will be helpful, and I've already walked through this a few times with them over our Skype chat. So before we get into installing this and playing it, I thought it would be beneficial for me to quickly play the setup without the riser. That way we can go back later and see if we hear any differences from the original setup without the bass drum riser. So let's go ahead and take a listen to my 20 by 14-inch 1980s Gretsch kick drum with a DW5000 pedal and a Vic Firth VK-B1 bass drum beater. It's the felt beater that they sell. So that's my default sound for this drum. I do have a packing blanket in here for muffling, and we also have a porthole on the front of the head. So I know that maybe is not the best setup for getting the most drastic change in terms of what we're about to switch to, but this is my setup, and this base plate is for me to use, and I want to see if it can make an impact for my musical applications. Now, this probably seems very counterintuitive, but I have the resonant side here on top because that's the head I'm going to remove in order to install the base plate. Because the base plate sits on this track where you can adjust the depth of it along the depth of your drum, it's really important to keep the batter side head and rim intact so you can use that as a reference point for attaching it on. All right, so now that I have this head removed, I'm going to take this drum and flip it to the other side, and I'm just going to remove the tension rods here on these bottom two lugs, because that's where I'm going to be removing the lugs to attach the base plate. So now it's time to install the base plate, and this is the part that is probably the trickiest, is balancing, having one hand on the inside to tighten the lug screws back in, holding this in place, and getting your lug back on. So now that we have the base plate roughly in place and just hanging here loose, we can adjust its positioning to get the edge of this plate here to line up with the edge of our hoop. So now we can put the heads back on. But before I do, I want to mention one issue that commonly comes up with bass drum heads, and that is the fact that with a bass drum head compared to the size of the actual shell, there's a lot more play and give where the head can kind of slide back and forth. And same thing with the hoops, right? I can move it here just on the collar of the head. It's really important when you go to start putting your lugs back on that you try to keep that centered as opposed to lopsided in one direction. And that way the bass drum pedal should attach on and not have any issues hitting the drum in terms of the batter side and the head being lopsided. So you probably noticed that I just raised up the spurs on the front end, and that's because I generally like to have my bass drum sloped just a little bit back towards me. That does two things. One, it's just more durable on stage and not going to slide forward as easy, which is really important in my case, especially if I'm laying in with the bass drum. But two, since the head on the batter side is going to be sloped back just a little bit, it creates less distance for my beater to travel to hit it. I don't like it to be too drastic because then my beater is almost attacking the head and would damage it, but just a slight bit, I think it makes a nice contact point. So I wanted to raise it up here to match, and it's mostly flat right now. Now, just from getting a chance to sit here and play a few notes, I wouldn't say that it's more sturdy or durable than having it clamped on the hoop, but it is definitely not less durable or sturdy. I don't really notice a change. And when I've used other risers, that's been my biggest complaint, is that the drum can feel springy, like it's gonna bounce up and down if it doesn't securely clamp to the pedal in some way, or it just wobbles a little bit. So this is really impressive. And again, it's only a 1-inch lift, so it's really not that drastic in terms of the setup, even if I were to throw toms on here. I think I would have enough clearance to get them down to where I usually like it, or I would just live with them being up slightly more. I definitely notice a little bit more low end presence just being in here with the drum a few feet away. I would have to go back and listen to how that translates with microphones. And I do think that that change is probably minimized by the dampening I have inside of this drum. So that's impressive. Now, do I need more low end in most cases gigging? Not really, because usually the bass drum is mic'd and the sound guy is gonna make it sound however he wants it to sound in the room through the PA speakers. Now here in the studio where I do a lot of recording, I think this could be a game changer. Even though I have the ability to use EQ, compression, and other sorts of effects to get the sound I need for a recording, I generally try to get it right at the source and then tweak in small amounts. This already has really nice low end and a full tone. So I think this would save me time in terms of mixing and making it sound all souped up through everything else I have at my disposal. I didn't have any issues getting the bass drum pedal on here. And in the examples that Bassplate has on their website and in the instructions, they're using the same DW5000 pedal that I have. I think this would work with most pedals. The thing you would have to be careful about is if you have one of those old school pedals where the wing nut to clamp down to the hoop is directly on top of the mechanism to clamp it, you might have some issues clamping it on here. If you have one where it's kind of off to the side or a drum key tool, I think you're gonna be okay. I think this product really solves a number of problems in the drum world, specifically related to bass drums. One, it's a lifter that's really durable and consistent that you don't have to take off when you throw into a gig bag. You can permanently install it. It gives you lateral flexibility with positioning your pedal, meaning that since we have a track here at the bottom that's totally flat, we can slide the pedal into a few different spots and still play the bass drum to get a great sound. As a gigging drummer, the most annoying thing I deal with setting up a bass drum pedal is going back and forth and trying to clamp it to the hoop where it's curved. And then when I tighten it, the bass drum kind of curves up in one way. Then I have to loosen it, slide it, start over again. This would be a lot easier to deal with where you can always count on your bass drum pedal being flat to the ground. This also protects your bass drum hoop. Now that's not a factor that really makes a huge deal to me. I've been clamping pedals on hoops for years. These DW pedals have a nice like nylon cover for the mechanism that clamps so it doesn't really scratch up your hoop. But if I was playing like one of those $10,000 Bubinga exotic wood DW kits with matching hoops, this would probably be a step I would want to take to avoid scratching that up, because it's likely irreplaceable or totally cost prohibitive to replace. And then of course we have the sonic enhancements that this does to your bass drum. I definitely notice more low end when I'm playing on this drum with this bass plate attached. Aside from that, I'm really excited to try this on a floor tom because I think the conversion kit with this as the pedal mechanism for making that work would be really efficient. The only thing I would need, and I don't have them here today to show you, would be some sort of like fold out spurs that could fit into your floor tom brackets. But I like that it's not a permanent solution, meaning it's going to permanently alter your drum set. You could easily just remove the reso side head, unscrew, get the bass plate out of there, and switch it over to another drum. With that said, the downside to this is that it's not universal for every size drum. So you need to decide if you're either going to do 16 and 20 or 18 and 22. The only real downside to this that I see is it's a little bit of a pain to install. That definitely took me longer than I thought it was going to. And the fact that you have to remove the reso side head means you're reaching over the entire depth of the drum to try to get everything mounted. I think it'd be a lot easier if you had two people, someone to kind of hold it in place and someone else to kind of thread those lug screws back on. But I was able to do it, and it took me maybe 15 minutes, and most of that was spent trying to find some longer lug screws, which they included, and I didn't think to try at first. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts about this bass plate, and if it's something you've used, leave your experience down below. And if it's something you're looking to try, I'll have some affiliate links to Sweetwater. They have a great video on this as well. So I'd highly suggest checking it out. And until next time, thanks.